wonderful to meet all of you. I was able to attend the session last month and found it really valuable and really just love this format and hope to become a more active participant in the future. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity. When I saw Shannon post about looking for speakers, I raised my hand and I said, I think I have something helpful to offer here, and hopefully you find it helpful as well. So to that end, I just want to talk a little bit more about who I am. I'm going to go ahead and see if here we go. So you heard a little bit about my professional background, but the one thing I wanted to stress is that I myself am an adult online learner. So I had a substantial career change in the late 2000s. And I went from being a full-time practicing attorney to an educator. And it was a very lucky and fortunate opportunity I got to teach. I had always wanted to do so. And really the opportunity just kind of presented itself to me. And since then, I've been kind of working myself up through the world of higher education and found myself deciding that, although I thought my law degree was quite helpful in many ways, that in order to really feel like I was doing right by my learners and by the institution, I needed to get a degree in online learning. So I actually, fortunately, it was available for free to me because, working for higher ed, very often education is provided to you. So I actually got my master's degree in instructional technology fully online in an asynchronous type environment. And we'll talk today about the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. So I really, I was a law student in the 90s and then an online education student in 2013 or 2012. And what a difference it was. But it did convince me, personally speaking, that if you know who you are as a learner and you understand where you are situated professionally, what your time availability is, how you learn, that online learning can be extremely valuable, not only in getting you what you need to do, but in a way that's convenient for you. So I, beyond that, in education, develop curriculum. So I have developed curriculum all the way from micro learning through full-on degree programs. Before joining Southern New Hampshire University, I was at Brandeis University working with others to develop a robotic software engineering program and recruiting industry experts for our advisory board as well as for our faculty and course developers. So I've kind of seen the gamut of online learning from very small to very large, and we'll also talk about that continuum today and where you feel yourself best situated depending on what your goals are. I've taught both on ground, so face-to-face in a very traditional classroom environment, small groups to lecture halls, all the way to online teaching for a couple of different institutions. So I feel in many ways able to characterize online learning in a certain way because I can compare and contrast it to what the face-to-face experience is. And I'm able to kind of translate that over to my learners, but hopefully it will be insightful to you as we go through the presentation. Of late, my focus has been on workforce alignment. So what type of learning can an institution of higher education provide to folks in the professional development space that is of meaning to them? I think that my personal bias is that higher ed does have a place in professional development. It does have a place in workforce development. I think that higher ed providers are, experts in learning, right? That's what we should be anyway. That's what people are paying their tuition for. So I see a lot of opportunity for us as higher educators to contribute to this space of professional development and helping learners get where they need to be. We'll talk specifically about two kind of newer type of higher ed innovations, not super new. You may have had some experience with it, but we will talk about this notion of what is micro or even nano learning and digital badging toward the end of the presentation. So let's get started. So one thing I thought that I really wanted to be clear about is I don't want to, I'm not here to sell any particular program over another and not here to sell one school over another or one type of online learning over another. I think that kind of perpetuates the problem that I'm trying to solve here. And that's really that, sort of people, many times in our professional development, we actually don't have a choice, right? We have to do this training. This is necessary for this licensure. This is necessary for you to continue and be in compliance, right? With whatever may be your HR requirements. What I'm trying to do instead is that if you make the decision and you're inspired to develop yourself professionally, what is it that you need to know to make the best decision for you? So what I'm hoping we end up with in this session is you as a critical consumer of online learning and making the best decision for you based upon what your career goals are. I know, just as a personal anecdote, so I was just chatting in the breakfast table before my presentation began that, I'm going to shoot for career number 3. So started out as a lawyer in the 90s, right? Moved over to higher education in the early 2000s. And so, what's next for my own swan song into retirement? And, I've thought about being a home stager. I love my HD TV. I'm not going to lie. And there's always been this artistic side of me that I've really kind of suppressed for the more concrete and technical side of me. And so I was myself researching how to get my staging. There's no real official credential, but how to sort of get a program that I felt had quality and would give me at least some gravitas to put on. And the irony is that I was in the middle of writing this presentation and also feeling the existential dread and angst of which staging online program, which home staging online educational program I was going to choose. And so I tried to use that as a way to think out loud, almost like a meta-analysis. And I did end up landing on a training program. I'll let you know how it goes. I haven't pulled the trigger because it's $1,200 and I'm just not quite sure that I do want to do it. But from what I've seen, I think I would be satisfied in it. And the rationale that I used and why I chose the one I did will kind of be replicated in the presentation today and the factors that I went through. So that's the goal. That's not to say in Q&A after, if there's a particular, I know HGTV is awesome, Lisa. I'm obsessed with Bargain Block, but I digress. So in the Q&A, feel free to ask about a particular program. It's not that it's not that I'm loath to talk about specific providers or anything. I just feel like just even as a matter of fairness, it's really not my job to critique or not critique, but I can absolutely, in a very objective way, share some of my observations or thoughts if there's a particular provider or course that you're thinking about doing. So I think of this as a 3-part analysis. So the first is, and we'll start here, is what are your skill gaps? The second's going to be, who are you as a learner? And I'm going to put you through multiple questions to ask yourself as a learner. And then we're going to talk about kind of the panoply of online options out there. And then ideally what that will do for you is help you kind of create an organic algorithm for yourself as to what makes sense for you to attain your goals. Now, I don't like the term skill gap. Gap implies, that there's something flawed or wrong with any one of us. And so that's not my intent. It is sort of industry accepted language at this point. So we'll run with it. If the slide were longer and I were wordier, I would say, where are the areas that you want to work on, or where are the areas you think would be beneficial to you to develop yourself professionally? So there's lots of ways to figure out what your skill gaps are. I mean, you can actually just be in a one-on-one meeting with a mentor. You can be in a one-on-one meeting with your supervisor, right? You can even be speaking to colleagues and really do that kind of critical analysis and discussion, right? But there's actually a concrete way to kind of get at the essence of your skill gaps, and it's something that it's a new little obsession that I've developed. So I'm going to show it all to you. But in the meantime, why are skills important? So even though I don't love the word gap, I do love the word skill. And the reason why, and many of you, if there's some HR folks out there in the audience will know this, their skills are really the currency. So there has been a push, and this is sort of a combined push of government officials, workforce folks, HR folks, and education folks, especially on the competency side of education, to speak in terms of skills and have skills be the common denominator or the quote currency of someone's professional background. And it's a way to make sure that if someone's applying for a position or if someone is applying for a promotion, that there's a way to kind of objectively evaluate what they can bring to the position and whether they're qualified for it. So skills is the language that we should, if folks on this presentation are not already comfortable swimming in, that's the sea you need to swim in. So you need to stop everything when we're done this presentation, and I want you to look at your resume, and I want you to honestly and critically ask yourself, does this demonstrate my skills? Does this resume speak in terms of the things that I am capable of bringing, delivering, opining about, or contributing? And if it doesn't, now's the time to work on it. Even if you're not actively pursuing a new job, it is imperative to continue to update your resume. Well, you don't want to forget what you've been doing, right? Which can happen if you've been in the game long enough. But it also is an opportunity to continue to keep yourself honest about what are my skills. The other thing, just very pragmatically, and maybe Shannon can attest to this. I'm not sure, if she's super in agreement with this completely, but I think you can assume if you are applying for new positions that your resume will at least preliminarily be read by a bot. There will be some artificial intelligence software looking at your resume and extracting what it knows how to extract, what language it's been educated to extract. And the language it's been educated to extract are your skills. So having a skills-based resume and critically evaluating your skills is a safer way to make sure you kind of go through thank you, Shannon, go through the HR process. And, I've read some, that's right, buzzwords. I've read, at the end of this presentation, I've got these references here, but you want to make sure that you're designated both your hard skills and your soft skills, because they're both critical. And when I finally get to the example that I did, you'll see why. Hard and soft skills, those are controversial expressions. There's some educators of late who really want us to start abandoning the notion of a hard skill versus a soft skill, because it kind of implies that soft is not as important as hard, which is not the case at all. In fact, you'll see that in the example I do provide. Soft skills are critical. When we talk about hard versus soft, we're thinking often it gets pigeonholed into technical versus communication, right? The things I know how to do versus empathy or feeling. It could be that empathy or feeling is the value add that you bring to a position or the reason why you get a promotion. So don't think soft as less, but make sure that all of your skills are on your resume. So that said, I've decided to create a little calculation for you. So this is how I want you to do this. You will take your resume and you're going to extract the skills from them. You're going to extract the skills from a job posting, right? So think of yourself on your career trajectory. Look at jobs out there. What might be my next step? What might be where I want myself to go? What is maybe a career shift I want to have? And then I want you to compare, and where you see distinctions or differences or gaps on your resume compared to the position are where you need to target your professional development. Now, let me take a very quick time out here. That's not to say that all professional development has to be aligned to your next career or to the promotion you want, or even to doing your job better. You may just want to evolve or develop an area of interest for you. Do you have an interest in horticulture? Do you have an interest in art history? So I do want to just do a quick aside that I think you'll find later discussion in this presentation valuable, even if you are not seeing this as sort of an obvious professional development tool. So hopefully you all can go into this. I don't want to mess up the presentation here, but this link here, I'm going to go ahead and I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm going to go ahead and provide that link in the chat right now. So when you have a moment to go on there, it's super easy to use, and you'll see you literally just take the body of your resume and you paste it in to the field where it says type or paste your text. You can type, it says, resume, job posting, syllabus. I have found that it actually doesn't really matter which you choose. You can just sort of post your text in there. And then I want you to go ahead and copy and paste. You'll see over on the right, when you do it, it'll say the skills that it extracts, and it'll have essential skills and then related skills. Go ahead and paste that into a document. Clear the field, start over, take your dream job, plop it in that extractor, pull out those skills, and then I want you to do a critical and honest evaluation. So what I did is I tried to be as authentic about this as possible. Like, I didn't try to preconceive the answer here, and it worked. So I was like, yes, it does work. And by the way, Jessica, you'll find that skill, that MZ data extraction tool is addictive, and you'll like be pasting all kinds of things in there and not be able to stop. So when I was at Brandeis and I was building that robotic software engineering program, I spent way too much time on things like dice.com, Indeed, LinkedIn, looking at the sort of shades of gray over software engineers, and sort of the title progression from software engineer all the way to software engineer 2 to principal software engineer, senior software engineer. And so it was a world I was somewhat comfortable in. So I said, let me throw in software engineer and see what happens. So this was unscripted, the result of my playing in MZ. And I found the same company in Austin, Texas, seeking applicants for these two positions. So it was the same unit, same place, same employer. So the nice thing about doing that is that at least I could control some variables. Presumably, the postings came out of the same HR department, right? So I wanted to at least control some of the variables, even though I wanted this to be as organic as possible. And the thing that was powerful for me is that when I looked at this and I compared the skills that were extracted from the positions, it was very obvious to me where a software engineer number 2 had to develop themselves professionally to get a principal software engineer job. The other thing that was interesting to me is that it was clear that the person needed to rise to the level of expertise in a particular technology. So you'll see buzzwords to me: emerging technologies, right? Thought leadership, business requirements. It was very clear that to go from software engineer 2 to principal software engineer, you needed to be developing an expertise in the technology. So maybe it's the language, right? Maybe it's whether it's Python, Rails, whatever. You need to be the go-to person, right, in that particular software language, for example. But beyond that, look at the quote soft skills that emerged here: problem solving, portfolio management, verbal communication skills, virtual teams. So what they're looking for a software engineer number 2 to demonstrate in order to transition to principal software engineer is not just to develop their expertise in their technical knowledge, but also to develop themselves as leaders and communicators. Now, the great thing for me as an educator is, I was so excited about this because really the options are endless for this person. I wish this person were a real person and I'd counsel them on what to do, but there's a lot of good stuff out there to develop these skills online. And, I could really see this person having a pretty clear pathway to this position if they were really willing to commit to the development it took to evolve these skills. So the other thing that I do want to add here before I move on is this is, sort of a real clinical way to do it. The reason why I like it is because you really strip your own personal bias from it, right? So like if I'm a software engineer too, and I want to become a principal software engineer, I feel like I'm a good communicator. The people on my team that are my colleagues like me, I can sort of do this, right? Well, yeah, you may be able to do it. You may be able to demonstrate it with just experience alone. But what this does is really keep you honest and say, can I really assert this? And if I can't comfortably assert it, what do I need to do professionally? What kind of certification should I get? What kind of certificate should I get? What kind of training should I go through to make sure I can demonstrate it to the employer? The other thing too, it sounds a little creepy, but go ahead and use LinkedIn and stalk away. Like I want you to find people who you admire, folks who have a career trajectory that interests you, and then see what they're showing as what trainings they're taking, what badges are they posting that they've earned, and see if you're in the right direction there. So who are you as a learner? So the thing that I really want to stress here is, when I was going to law school or even college, I didn't know myself as a learner, nor did really anyone care, especially with law school. And it was like, this is how you learn the law. And you either kind of conform to it or you can't conform to it. There's some value in that notion of stick-to-itiveness, right? Like, yeah, I don't really learn this way, or this is kind of a struggle, but I grinned and bore it, and I've emerged victorious like a phoenix from the flame. Yeah, maybe that has some value when you're first starting out, or you're getting your first degree. Maybe an employer wants to see, yes, this person can persist, and sort of proves their persistence. Thank you, Julie. No one talks about it. We're doing it now. And it's just, it sort of hits you, right? You don't really evaluate yourself as a learner. You need the degree, and it's your ticket to a certain world, but you don't really maybe even have a choice, right, as to what works for me. Now, the game has changed, my friends, and this is all you. So this is, unless your employer is paying for it, this is your money. You're investing your time. These are the beach days that you're not going on because you've decided to put yourself in front of a laptop for a few hours, right? Just speaking to Heather earlier, and she, just finished her online degree, and I'm sure she knows the sacrifices, right? That's the luncheon with your friends that you miss. So it's about time that you take ownership over it and make the choice that works for you, because this is for you. This isn't to prove anything to anyone. This is for you. So that said, lots of questions we're going to put ourselves through. We're going to look at 6 key areas. These are, I think, the most pragmatic. I think there's a lot of other features. And Julie, if there's other things that you see missing, I'd love your thoughts as well. These are osmosis, right? Maybe if I just maybe if I just read the book long enough, it'll come through. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that anymore, Jessica. We're gonna take control over things. So extent of the gap, right? So we're going to talk about, just how big is the chasm between where you are and where you need to be, right? What instructional strategies work for you? What assessment styles work for you? Where are you on what I've called or nicknamed the flexibility continuum? I feel like I should trademark that because it kind of came to me in the middle of the night. That's not that exciting. Support services. Are you, how in need of support are you? And just be really honest with yourself on that. And then what do you want for your proof? And this is sort of, I think, the fun thing for me that I want to show you, something that I built and earned, and kind of what it means to me and the value it may have to each of you. So what is the extent of the gap? I loved this picture. So let me just read through these and try to give you some concrete examples. Are these new skills or extensions of existing skills? So let's think back to our software engineer example where we use the skills extractor. So I would say, don't know this person, it's a made up person for illustration purposes only, but if we knew this person and we were counseling her and she wanted to go from principal software engineer from software engineer 2 to principal software engineer, we knew she needed to show expertise in certain technical skills and the demonstration of leadership skills. I may say to her, it looks like on the software side of things, that's an extension of an existing skill. On the leadership side, I may say to her, that's a new skill. So that will influence your approach to what you choose for your learning. You may, so for example, if someone knows Python, right, and they're doing a new, where they will need to learn R, or they know, software engineers in the crowd are probably like, stop talking about the languages. You don't know what you're talking about. But if I know R, I can probably figure out Python, right? On the other hand, if I've never led a team before, I probably better not wing it. So what do I need to evolve myself as a leader in order to succeed in that position? I may need more help than I would teaching myself possibly a new software language. I may not need an instructor to teach myself a new language, but I may need an instructor or a peer relationship in order to feel comfortable that I'm a leader. So am I comfortable in this domain? So for example, let's say I decide, I'm really liking, so there's one area of education that's using data to make informed decisions for your learners. So a lot of learning management systems are giving you lots of back-end data. How long are your students spending on a given quiz? Where in the course do they seem to start to struggle? Are there even particular questions within an assessment that seem to be stumping the learners? And then what time of day are they logging in? How long are they spending in any given assessment? I mean, if you like data, you could make yourself dizzy with everything that's available to you, right? So maybe I say, I'd be a better educator if I made sure I understood how to interpret data and make predictions based on data, right? Maybe I'm interested in something like predictive analytics, right? Well, to the extent that that has a statistics underpinning, that makes me have nightmares. If you say statistics to me, you lose me. I'm like, lips are going cold, hair on my arms are standing up, and I'm retreating to that scary place in my mind that was calculus when I was in high school. So for me, that is a big cap, and that's not a domain I'm comfortable in. So I need to think long and hard about, do I need some sort of remediative type learning before I can go on and get something specific in the world of data, for example? Then how are skills in this domain typically acquired, and how does one establish credibility in this domain? That's where a lot of stalking on LinkedIn comes in handy, because what if I decide, what if my career number 3 is not a home stager, right? And if the real estate market doesn't start getting more reasonable, it's not going to be home staging. But if let's say for career number 3, pre-retirement, I want to become a data analyst, right? And you're thinking, that's crazy, Nancy. Well, maybe it's not crazy, right? I do have a lot of professional experience to give, but if I'm looking online, honestly, and I'm looking at other folks, they're either getting their master's in data analytics, right? Or they're getting high quality certificate programs from institutions that also have a master's in analytics, right? So maybe it's a condensed mini degree or certificate program. I may need to do that. It may be that it's maybe not adequate for me to take, an online certificate program from a non-higher ed provider. I may need to jump into a higher ed provider, right? So those are the kind of things I want you to be thinking about when you think of your gap. Now it's your instructional strategies. And this one, to Julie and Jessica's comments as we're kind of laughing in the chat here, this is where most of us didn't have a choice in like college experience, number one, right? Now we have a choice because the world of online learning has enabled so much flexibility in choice as to what the type of instruction is that you're going to be getting, that it's almost overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what I want. So I'm going to try to help you define some of the instructional strategies that you should be looking for. And then I want you to think about yourself, not who you were when you were, getting your first degree, but where you are now in terms of learning. So how is the learning content delivered? So for example, in my aging process as a learner, have become much less interested in reading things and much more interested in watching things. So I don't know what that's, I don't know if that's genetic, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's physiological, organic, I don't know. It could just be shortened attention span because of social media. But if I'm fully bogged down in simply just reading and there's not an opportunity for me to escape and watch a demonstration of what I'm reading, or to watch someone speak about what I'm reading, I am personally finding it more challenging to stay connected to it, connected to the material. So for me, I want to know when I'm critically evaluating this online program, just how much reading is it going to be versus what other mixed media are they going to be providing to me. So I'm going to want to see, if possible, that the learning material is delivered in a variety of ways so that I have an escape hatch from the reading and I can go to a video, for example, or I can go to a simulation, or maybe even a lecture format where I'm speaking or someone is speaking to me, just so I can depart from the written word. How grounded in the application is the learning? Well, doesn't that sound erudite, right? I mean, wow, she's smart. No, what that means is how useful is it to what you need to do? So Heather, I'm sorry to keep calling you Heather, at the beginning in our coffee chat earlier, like what she liked about her program. And sorry, I live in downtown Manchester, so that would be car exhaust. She said what she liked about her master's program is that she was actually able to see the connection between what she was learning in her classes and what she was doing at work. There is no more magical of a learning experience than that. The reason why is that as adult learners, one of the ways that we benefit from learning is the ability to see its relevance to our day-to-day lives. We almost need, as adult learners, to be bought in or convinced that this is helpful to me and are important to me. And when those kinds of connections are made evident to us, we dig in much deeper. And it's actually a beneficial transference from the learning to our professional life. So, is this just going to be someone sharing information with you without any kind of examples as to how this is relevant to you? You may find that more challenging. So you want this sort of really situated in a practical application if you want to immediately take this to your job. And then you need to think about, are you going to work with others? So is this a static one-on-one environment, you and the learning experience, or is there opportunity for instructor communication or communication with your peers? And is that important to you or not? So I know myself as an online learner, I just, in all candor, really had a love-hate with my peers. In some ways, I needed them and enjoyed the stimulation of those conversations and the sharing and exchange of ideas. But on the other hand, we were busy professionals. And when we were working on something together, they weren't always able to work on our respective timelines, right? And so then you sort of get into a bit of a tension with your fellow learners. So you really need to think about, do I want to have peer involvement or not? And then will you be assessed? So this is interesting to me. So We've all done corporate training where we've kind of advanced the slides, completed the slides, and the experience ends, and we've considered to have completed it because we've sort of committed to time, or we've continued to click. But you're not being assessed. So at no point in that experience have you even taken sort of a quick informal quiz of any kind to make sure that you're integrating the learning. I am going to encourage you all to at least be open-minded to professional development where you are assessed. And the reason, and you're thinking, well, I'm not in college anymore. This isn't for a grade. Why am I going to put that pressure on myself, right? If this isn't a college, if this isn't a degree program that you're in. The reason why is because you actually learn through assessment. So the act of being inquired about and reflecting back to yourself, did I appreciate this material? Am I able to answer some questions about this material? Have I integrated this material? Really magnifies the learning. So it sounds scary and intimidating, but really it's the way to get the most bang for your buck as far as I'm concerned. So then there's sort of the different types of assessment styles. And this is something you should be, evaluating when you're looking at these programs. Are there formative and summative assessments? What do I mean by that? So formative or practice, basically think of those as practice exercises with feedback provided to you. And then there's summative assessments. Those are like your high stakes, end of the end of a big module type, larger assessments where it's not really for practice maybe, but it's for the grade, right? It's what you submit, or it's determining if you've passed or failed or met the threshold score to get the certificate. They both have value, and I would suggest that formative assessments are vital to appreciating and understanding the material. It's your opportunity to practice. Another example of really great or fun formative assessments are like simulations with questions, real life simulations that will put you through an experience you may have professionally. And then we call them branch scenarios. So if you choose a certain reaction to a circumstance, it'll inform you what a consequence of that may be, and then put you back in the scenario and say, now that you've chosen this, these are your options, and kind of put you through those thought process and thought patterns. It's a really nice, safe way to experience the learning and develop and flex those skills, without having a grade attached to it. And then, authentic assessments. So when I say that, maybe you're in like a UX, thinking about something with user experience design, or even software engineering. Do you want a program that's going to require you to maybe even submit like a portfolio, right? So do you want to be able to show an employer, listen, I just got their certificate, but don't take my word for it that I acquired all of this learning. Here's actually a demonstrative example of the work that I did. And then that employer can actually see how that demonstrative work aligns to what you would be doing in that role, and see that you are in fact prepared for it, or you do have experience doing it. And then there's also auto-assess versus assessed by a human. So that's really going to depend a lot on the type of training that you're doing, right? Are these, we'll get to a spectrum at the end of the presentation coming up, but, is this sort of a micro-learning experience, or is this more traditional instructor-led experience? To some extent it matters, right? So you could just be kind of doing objective style questioning and answering and getting, like a multiple choice type thing. We've all been through them, and then it spits the answer, whether it's right or wrong. Maybe it provides feedback or not, and then you're assessed, right? Or do you really want a human assessing you? So do you want an expert in the field looking at the work you've produced and assessing it? It's going to really depend. It's also going to depend on the options out there. I think to the extent that you can find an experience that enables you to get feedback from someone that has credibility to you and who has demonstrated their expertise in that particular domain, I think that that's really a real win if it's available to you. Then there's the flexibility continuum. This is that thing I'm going to trademark someday, just kidding. So I like to think about it. Where are you in your life? And as a result of where you are in your life, where do you sit on these continua? And it's really important questions to ask yourself, because you don't want to sign up for something that you're not going to complete. So I say that because this isn't like, oh gosh, if I don't get my, associates or my bachelor's, I'm going to get in trouble, right? This isn't, or, I'm going to have all of this student loan. This is a little different. This is you paying for something for you that you believe will benefit yourself professionally. And even though you have the ability to walk away and it's all fine, there is still value in proving to yourself that you've chosen to do something, you've endured or lived through the experience, you've come out the other side of it all the wiser. So I really think it's important for you to get into a program that you have the capacity to finish. There's nothing more powerful than having that win in your corner. That's something no one can take away from you. It's something that you will always be able to show for yourself, and you did it, right? And so be realistic with where you are, set yourself up for success as a result. That's right, Kimberly. It's all about being honest. So the spectrum falls all the way from synchronous to an asynchronous environment. Synchronous environment means that for up to large portions, you need to be online at a certain time. So, I don't know if you can do that. That doesn't mean the learning's any better. It just means that that learning model at that institution has determined that synchronous learning is the way they're going to go. That may be the way they've structured themselves, and that's a decision they've made. I'm not commenting on the quality of the learning, but know that the synchronous nature of that means you need to be on at certain times. Whereas asynchronous is a come and go. You can kind of log in and log out. There may be some due dates or deadlines that you need to comply with just in order to keep the course flowing by the until the end of the term, or the experience flowing till the end of the term. But beyond that, it's whenever you want to go in and out. And again, that's not a reflection on the quality, because I'm currently teaching a business law class asynchronously, but I'm still very involved with my students and responding to questions whenever they need me to respond to them. And they wouldn't really, I don't think they have a cold feeling, right, that it's an asynchronous experience. I'm still very much present. It's just on different time zones. Then there's partly online all the way to online. Some experiences, the terminology or buzzwords you'll hear there will be, is it hybrid, or is it a blended environment, or is there a residency requirement, right? Some online programs do require some level of presence, some certificate programs. They want you to do a power weekend there. And then the rest of the learning is online versus fully online. Do you want it to be paced or self-paced, right? Is it a subscription type model where you begin and end whenever you feel like it, right? So for that staging certificate that I signed up for, it's really, there's no time limit. I would pay for it, and then I would go and engage with the modules whenever I could and then click out. That's a fully self-paced model. And then longer all the way to shorter, right? Is this something that I really want to invest a lot of time in, or is this something that I need, that the best I can do is engage quickly in it? It may not be enough for me to fill that gap, right? Remember that gap, but maybe I just do bites of learning and bites of learning and bites of learning, and then eventually stack all of that learning together and then have the larger experience to show for it. I want to go through this a bit quickly because I do want to get to the last side. So support services, this may depend on the learning, but if you're the kind of person that really wants to make sure that you have a contact that you can call with questions whenever you have the questions, I don't want you to overlook this piece. I don't want you to assume, well, I'm a grown woman, I'll figure this out. You may not be able to figure it out, right? The learning management system that this training program could be on could be very clunky. There may be some technical issues that you can't overcome. There may be a lack of clarity in the instructional design and you don't know what you're supposed to be reading. There's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed of. This is your money. You're paying for it. You need to be able to communicate with someone if you have a question. So be honest with yourself and say, listen, I don't know that I want to get involved with a provider that doesn't have at least some level of support for me. And you can think about that. So do you want proof of completion? So this is really interesting. If I'm super curious about a topic and I watch a podcast, as far as I'm concerned, that's online learning. That falls within the purview of this presentation, believe it or not. Watching a podcast in an area of interest to me, that's a form of online learning in my view. But I mean, I don't want a certificate like, Nancy watched a podcast on floral arranging, right? Listen to a podcast on floral arranging. On the other hand, I may want proof. I may want to put this in my LinkedIn profile. I may want to bring this to my employer. I may want to put this on my resume. So figure out what kind of proof this provider is going to be giving you, and is it of import to them? So here's an example of some of the newer type proof out there. This isn't to sell. This is just to compare this to something that you, in fact, this isn't really publicly available even, but an example of some of the newer forms of proof that you as a learner can have. So this is a badge that I designed with a group of folks, and it's an electronic badge. It's built on blockchain technology. So the benefit of blockchain technology is that it's always verifiable. It's not a piece of paper that's printed from a registrar in a transcript office as an institution. This is, Renee, that's awesome. So this is one of the digital badges that we created, and it was about a 10 to 12 hour or so experience it was auto-assessed with feedback provided to the learner. And as a result of completing this learning experience successfully with a threshold passing score, this badge issues. And the nice thing about it, so I earned it because I wasn't going to build something and then not put myself through it. So I put myself through it, successfully reached the threshold score, and now I have this badge, which is kind of cool. And it's in something called a backpack, right? So other than the fact that it's really cool and it's beautifully designed and it helps me geek out, and I love using the word blockchain, the significance of it is that it actually demonstrates to the reader of the badge what I was able to do. So beyond a course transcript, which says, yeah, Nancy took a course in Eastern European studies from 1700 to 1800 when she was at Cornell. Big whoop. What does that even mean? This demonstrates what I actually did and learned about in this course and what competencies I mastered as a result of it. So it's just a really detailed way to expose to third parties what you learned, and in a way that's verifiable to them that they can click on. Yes, that's right, Kimberly. There's lots of different models about badging too. Like some schools are badging courses, right? And so, or badging experiences within courses. So as a student is actually getting the courses, they're also parallel demonstrating skills that they're earning along the way that they can convert to employment even before they finished their degree. I love that model, Kimberly. So the example here is like, here's my badge. I can share it through a link. I can share through HTML. The link is an API integration, or I can do it on social media. And if you go ahead and just click, LinkedIn, for example, it really appears kind of beautifully on the LinkedIn interface. And then I can also, if I'm a bit, traditional, I can actually print out a certificate, which is a really cool feature. And it gives you, however you want this framed in your office. If you really want it in paper, you can actually control what it looks like. So you can pick all of these different templates. So not only do you get that digital badge and demonstrate those skills, to Kimberly's point in the chat about those skills you've learned along the way, you can also get the traditional format of of a certificate. So this is the last part of the speech. It looks like I've got about 3 more minutes, which is perfect. So I want to conclude with the kind of one possible construct if we think about the panoply of online learning. And I want to, this is the lawyer in me, but I've had to put the asterisk in there, and I had to put for discussion purposes only. This list is not intended to be exhaustive because, again, the world of online learning is very vast, and there's all different kinds of online learning out there. There are private providers. There are programs through your employer, like IBM has, Salesforce has all of these very involved professional development programs. There are institutions of higher ed, very traditional providers of online learning, right? So it would be an exercise in futility to list them all. So really what I did here is just kind of give you a construct to be thinking about things, only one possible non-exhaustive construct. But I built this from tiny bits of learning all the way to longer time frame levels of commitment that you may have. So we go all the way from nano learning, which I'll talk about in 2 seconds, all the way to a degree program, which is sort of maybe your bachelor's or your associate's, bachelor's, master's, PhD. One thing, for example, on here is there can be some post-degree certificate programs. So even there is not entirely accurate because you can have a post-degree, post-baccalaureate certificate, post-master's certificate, even post-PhD work you can do as well. So if we think about duration or commitment, we go from nano learning all the way to degree programs. Along this continuum is where you'll figure out, how much time do I really have to devote to these things? And then I gave you some examples of what these may be. So nano learning, I was not aware of nano learning. I thought micro was the kind of the smallest level of learning, right? Those are your targeted skills-based type, I would say kind of like a corporate training-esque type condensed experience, kind of like the badge that I just showed you. Nano learning, some employers and some professional societies are actually offering it as a thing and preferring it. So I was down before the apocalypse, I was in Florida presenting some research that Southern New Hampshire University had done on automation and AI. And there were folks, HR and talent development folks in the audience who said, if it's not nano, we don't do it. So we want our employees to be able to take their professional development in 5-minute increments, pass an assessment, and move on. So there are some, there's some that, the age of TikTok, right? There's some employers and some professional societies that are finding value in those really, really, really nanotized nuggets of learning and actually preferring them for their employees. So there's something to be thinking about there where those are starting to have value. That doesn't mean that, I just did a nano experience. It may have value, especially if you start to conglomerate them all into a larger one. Yes, Jessica, there are great flashback card apps. There are curated YouTube. I mean, you could go on, if the MZ Skills Extractor wasn't enough excitement for you, you could go onto YouTube and start looking at curated YouTube playlists ad nauseum on different topics, right? So absolutely, and I consider that online learning, right? So that's your spectrum. And then all the way to your certificate programs. I wanted to just quickly, before we go, talk about some buzzwords you may be hearing, or at least for the last few years, stackable credentials. That's sort of to the point, kind of the point that Kimberly was making about digital badging showing skills along the way. There are some providers now that are creating pathways maybe into degree programs from stackable kind of discrete learning experiences, right? So a stackable credential would be a learning pathway to a larger credential from building upon one credential to another, which is really interesting because it allows you to kind of go in and out of the learning at a cadence that works for you, acquire these credentials or these badges, and then create an amalgam of them, and then have a larger meta badge type experience to submit for it. I did want to make a quick plug for just the traditional auditing of an actual college course. So for example, if we go back to my statistics anxiety, if I really felt like I wanted to do a certificate program that was data intensive, and I really thought that a certificate in data analyst was critical for me, but I was agonizing over kind of the underpinnings of that learning that required knowledge of statistics, I may audit a college course on statistics, right? Where it's in the few $100 range. It will give me the assessment I want, depending on where I go. It may or may not give me some peer interaction. It gives me an instructor who I can email when I'm having a breakdown because I can't do statistical analysis. And the thought of it's giving me hives just thinking about it. But I may benefit from a college course in statistics too, right? So you really, the point of this slide was hopefully to just get you to be thinking about all of the options out there, and don't just pigeonhole yourself. Think of all of these options as you're thinking about what's best for you. So I think, Heather, the target was 850-ish.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm feverishly taking notes, and I appreciate you putting some of those links in the chat box. So informative. So now we have time for Q&A, everybody. So if you have any questions for Nancy right now, type it in the Q&A box, not the chat box. It makes it easier for me to monitor. Though now all of a sudden I can't find my Q&A box. I don't even know where that went. So weird. Okay, there we go. Got it. So yes. So yeah, if you have any questions for Nancy, anything in that she was talking about, put it in the Q&A box, and we have time to answer some questions. Let's see here. Trying to make sure no one's putting it over in the general chat. Okay. So some of the questions are going in the chat box, which is great. We'll answer those, but if you could add them in the Q&A, it's just easier for us to monitor. So anyway, the first question in the chat box was, okay, that's not actually a question. So Shannon just said, who's excited to find out more about professional development? She is. Okay. All right, we have a question here. Any recommendations for career changers?
Yeah, so yeah. So I think what I'll do is, you know what, Anne, this was an awesome question, because I think I want to test the construct I created about the questions. So I think that this is so awesome. Thank you for this opportunity. I think I would go back to the gap analysis and start there. So I think, yeah, so I think for the career changers, I would decide, how great of a leap of a transition is this for me? So if this is, maybe it's like, for example, healthcare clinical to healthcare administrative, right? That is arguably a career change, but the overarching domain is the same. So the nice thing about being a healthcare administrator with clinical background is that you can empathize with your employees, right? You understand the people from whom you are requiring to submit to your Epic software and what their day-to-day life may be. So for that person, I'd say, all right, my gap is I know the underlying material of this world of healthcare, but I maybe lack the leadership's style. So I would look at some healthcare administrators on LinkedIn and say, how did they get to where they are? And did they go back and get their master's in healthcare administration, for example? Were they able to do it purely from evolving into a clinical place of showing progressive, from nurse to maybe to supervising nurse and so on, right? And then I would go ahead and find healthcare administrator jobs. I would put them in that MZ skills extractor, compare that to where I am right now, and figure out where those gaps were. If it's not the same domain, so if it's like, let's say that in my third career, I decided that I wanted to become a software engineer, and don't make fun of me, but I've actually thought about that because I really like code. The small events I've had with coding, I've really enjoyed because I'm kind of a logical thinker. That's a tougher one because there's a lot of dialogue going on right now about, what makes a software engineer. And is it a degree in computer science or software engineering, or is it just an incredible amount of experience? I don't want it. I could take 4 days to answer that question, but assuming that I, needed that degree, I may need a degree in software engineering. On the other hand, do I have a lot of personal experience that I have acquired through just really enjoying it and done personally, and that a boot camp experience might be good. Some boot camps actually will help you with job placement. So these boot camps have relationships with employers, and there's a general understanding of integrity of the learning, so that if you take this boot camp, we're reasonably confident that you have acquired and mastered these skills, and we'll offer you introductory level employment into that field. On the other hand, there are a lot of master's degree programs now, be on the lookout for, that are recognizing there's career changers. So they have, they call them gap bridging, not uncoincidentally, programs to get you from where you are to where you need to be to succeed in the program. So let's say you have a bachelor's in English and you really want to take this master's in computer science. Are they going to force you back to school to get your bachelor's in computer science first? No, there's actually master's programs out there right now that realize that there's a gap. There may be a gap in math or some science courses, and they will help you fill that gap with specific designated learning. So hopefully that was helpful. You're on mute, Heather.
Sorry, I muted myself so I wouldn't have any feedback while you were talking. Very informative. So Kim was asking about the badges, and she was wondering how employers in the area are responding to badges.
Yeah, this is a great question. I have to be careful here because I think we don't know the answer yet. And the reason why I say that is because when badges are presented to employers or employees as an option, they're very excited about it. But are they independently of themselves having a demand for it? Not necessarily. So it's like, if you build it, they will come, but are they asking you to build it in the first place? Not necessarily. So, I think it's the responsibility of, this is my opinion, I think it's the responsibility of the creator of the badge, the entity, the educators conceiving of the badge, to evangelize it. And once it's properly evangelized, the buy-in is high. And I think at some point, there will become enough of it, right, so that then the demand sort of exceeds the supply. We're not at the point where that's happening, but I will say, though, that when presented with the opportunity to do these kinds of experiences, they are well received. It's still a bit new. People don't necessarily know what to do with the badges as well. They're not willing to commit to posting them. So for example, it just in a complete act of hypocrisy, right? Have I posted my multilingual communication badge to my LinkedIn profile? No, because it's not telling us. I took that because I wanted to make sure I thought the learning was quality, right? I mean, I needed to participate in something that I helped build. But it doesn't align with, my particular career trajectory. So it would be a bit superfluous on my LinkedIn profile. But you're seeing more and more of them. Certainly, this isn't in the area to your direct question, but you're starting to see a lot of large scale adoption of them. So you've got your Salesforce Trailhead badges, you've got your IBM badges, you've got your Google badges, your Amazon badges. So it's happening. It's happening. And I think, will it ever be the in thing? I'm not so sure, but I see no downside in having them, bragging about the ones that you feel are important to you. And when interviewing or talking to your employer, really demonstrating the value of them and advocating for the value of them.
And would love to talk more about it because this is near and dear to my heart for what I do for a living. And badging is, amazing. It's new, like you said. So, I mean, that's just people just, it'll catch on, just like Bitcoin. When we first heard about that, we're like, what is that? That's, so I think, stay tuned, I think, as far as badging is concerned. Nancy did a wonderful job. We are over time. I'd love to talk more, but we are keeping the room open, everybody, for another 30 minutes. So feel free to stick around and network. Nancy did say she has some time to stick around too. So I know there was probably a lot more questions, and I had to cut her off here right now. So she'll be around. You can speak with